Today on Holy News, we're going to delve into a topic that's much more serious than our usual content here. This piece involves discussions of sexual abuse and systemic failure. It's a tough topic, but one that someone needs to talk about because ignoring it only allows these horrors to continue. The UK is currently and has been now facing a horrifying gang rape crisis. And instead of protecting the victims, the system is naturally tangled up in political debates and endless deflections. So let's break it down. For many years now, gangs, primarily made up of men of Pakistani descent, have been grooming and abusing young white girls across the UK.
Over the decades, thousands of underage girls have been ensnared, lured, and threatened and have been victims of child sexual abuse. Most of the perpetrators have been found to be of Pakistani origin.
And this isn't just a one-off tragedy. It's a systemic failure affecting multiple towns. Conservative leader Kemi Badenoch has been calling for a national inquiry to address what went wrong.
Across the country, thousands of girls were tortured and sexually abused at the hands of men who treated them as things to be used and disposed of.
You would think that this would unite everybody in national outrage, but you're wrong.
I hate this place.
Critics argue, do we really need another inquiry? Sure, there's been investigations, but here's the kicker. Nothing has changed. Victims like Christina O'Connor continue to share their painful stories. Christina bravely shared her experience in a book that she wrote of being raped 22 times by a grooming gang. The gang used plastic bags instead of condoms, adding another layer of trauma to her story. I'll just read a quote from her so you know what we're dealing with. When I was 14, a man invited me to a birthday party. One man gave me a pill, and after I took it, I passed out. When I came to, the man was raping me, and I was terrified, but I couldn't fight him off. That was my first experience of sex. The article is completely heartbreaking, and I implore you guys to have a read. Here's another one of a 12-year-old girl named Sophie in 2006 in Oldham.
She'd been molested in a graveyard by a man named Ali. A desk officer told her to come back with an adult when she was sober. Two men accosted her in the police station. Joined by a third, they raped her in their car. When they dumped her on the street, she asked a man named Sawar Ali for directions. He took her to his home, raped her, and gave her money for a bus fare home. A man named Shakil Chowdhury pulled up in his car and offered to take her home. He abducted her, took her to a house where he and four other men repeatedly raped her.
These are harrowing stories, but what's even worse is that despite multiple attempts to get help, they were ignored by officials who feared being called racist. Their testimonies highlight systemic failures and negligence that has been allowed for these crimes to continue. It's heartbreaking and it's truly enraging. But here's where it gets even messier. Every time that someone tries to address the abuse, the conversation veers into debates about multiculturalism and accusations of Islamophobia. But the truth is, this isn't about race. It's about holding perpetrators accountable. The real focus here should be justice for the victims, not sidetracking to conversations about social issues. In Rotterdam, over 1,400 victims were ignored for 16 years. The result, as you would expect, a devastating cycle of abuse that continues. In this recent clip, Lord Malcolm Pearson speaks about the deeply disturbing issue.
There appear to have been upwards of 250,000 young white girls raped in this century, very largely by Muslim men. And given these girls are usually raped several times a day for years, so, my lords, what is the government's answer to the Chief Constable?
What struck me about this clip was not just the severity of crimes that he discussed, but the response, or lack thereof, when he touched on the victims' unimaginable suffering. The room fell eerily silent when the true horrors these young girls endured were revealed. Yet, when the word Muslim men were uttered, the atmosphere shifted instantly, as if the focus of the discussion had just pivoted towards something completely different. The room erupted in gasps, but not because of the injustice of the pain of these victims, but because of the fear of addressing the uncomfortable truth.
Muslim men. And given these girls are usually...
We cannot shy away from acknowledging the elephant in the room. The majority of the perpetrators of these crimes were men of Pakistani British descent. Now, this isn't an attempt to generalize or blame an entire group, but rather to point out that there may be deeper systemic cultural issues at play. And unfortunately, every time that this subject is raised, the conversation inevitably derails into accusations of Islamophobia, as if protecting the feelings of the perpetrators somehow outweighs protecting the victims of these horrific systemic abuses. Instead of focusing on how to prevent further victimization, the dialogue too often turns into a minefield of political correctness, where we're terrified of offending a minority group, even though the true offense here is the ongoing victimization of these innocent girls. So let's get this straight. The real issue here isn't religion. It's the terrible, unforgivable crimes that are being committed, and the failure to act decisively because of the fear and backlash. I know this is a heavy topic, but I want to hear from you. What do you think could be done to stop these horrific crimes and ensure that the voices of the victims are being heard? Let me know what you think in the comments down below.